Hello, this is sort of a first for me. I am responding to someone else's video because this is a response to Hollywood Gaming's top 10 British vehicles. So instead of me going all berserk in the comment section of their video, I sort of wanted to give my own spin on it. The first time I saw their video, I was like, this is crap. They don't know what they're talking about. The second time, I was like, okay, they actually do. Hollywood Gaming does have a point um, in that they sort of um, they cut um, up and they sort of set a limit for themselves that it has to be vehicles produced by the nations that they're talking about. So all the Lend-Lease stuff sort of gets put away, which, considering this is a game and these are vehicles available for certain nations, I think is just off. So I'm not here to crap on Hollywood Gaming's uh, excellent video. I will link them in the doobly-doo for you guys to go and watch. But if you do comment, please be respectful, right? I'm not trying to start a fight here. I disagree with their picks of vehicles, and this is my pick of top 10 vehicles. And I do this based on what is good. So before you can do anything, before you can make a top 10 of anything, I think you should define what is it that you're actually thinking is good. For me, that is how effective is a certain vehicle in the game, not in real life. How effective is it? How survivable is it? How good of a point for value is that vehicle choice? And then the final thing is, when you're evaluating effectiveness, more shots is always better. More shots is more better. If we can break up grammar here, um, because in this game, if you have more shots, that means that you get to roll more dice. As soon as you roll dice, you might hit something. If you have one dice, it becomes very binary whether or not you hit. But if you have more shots, then it means that you're pretty certain odds will be that you can hit. So more shots is better on certain platforms, and vehicles is definitely one of those. So that is my definition of what is good for a vehicle. Now, here is my top 10, starting with number 1 for the British. The M3 Stuart, the darker Stuart. That is an amazing, amazing tool to have. It is 8 plus, it is vulnerable, which means that you can't just throw it at the enemy and expect it to survive. It will die to even the lowliest Panzerfaust. AT rifles can kill it, in the side at least. And heavy autocannons is terrifying for a Stuart. But it is very, very point efficient. It costs 130 points and has 18 machine gun shots if you don't buy the Pintle. If you do buy the Pintle, that means it's 23 machine gun shots for 145 points. That is incredible. That is simply just amazing. It has a light AT gun, which the single shot I most often miss with mine. And what it does so very well is that it threatens infantry. Any infantry that you're pointing your Stuart at, if you say, I will shoot, they will go down. Doesn't matter who they are, doesn't matter if they're veterans, they will be forced to go down. If they don't, they will suffer massive casualties, and quite often you'll see whole units simply disappear. So the darker Stuart is definitely the best British vehicle, number 1. Number 2 might be an odd one for somebody, but for people who know me, they know what I'm picking. It's the Airborne Jeep. The Airborne Jeep is not a very strong profile. It's not it's soft-skinned, but it does have recce. so that makes it a little bit more survivable. It's very small. The Jeeps are actually very, very small, which means that you can get cover for almost anything, which is nice. And here comes the big one. If you're buying the version with 10 mmg shots forward facing, then it's 45 points. That is less than a full mmg infantry unit for 10 mmg shots with recce. That is soft skin, so it can't actually get killed that easily by small arms fire. It is a steal at 45 points. It is so good. So good. And here it's points for value that I'm thinking about, right? Because yes, there are stronger choices in the armored car selection, but if you're just looking at point for value, this is amazing. It's maybe the best buy of the game, in my view. So that is number 2 for me. Number 3 is the Staghound. And this is sort of a weird one because just looking at the points for value, it's more expensive than a Stuart. It comes in at 145 points, not 130 as the darker Stuart does. And it only has 10 machine gun shots, 2 coaxials, 2 in the hull, and a light anti-tank gun. It is wheeled, it has recce, and it has 8+. So why is it so good? Well, it is a tank in the armored car selection. It is close-topped, has 8+. That means it is a tank. You can make tank assaults with this. You can do tank assaults, and you can do them 12 inches. So if you line up that Staghound really well, you can run through the enemy line and just cause massive casualties. At the same time, it's one of the only armored car selections where you do have the ability to split fire. So your coaxial can shoot one way and your hull mounted machine gun shoot another way. That is not many armored cars where you can do that without them being open topped. Finally, you can, for 15 extra points, you can buy a pintle mounted MMG, meaning that you can do 3-way split fire with this armored car tank. And in many British builds, where you have a darker Stuart as your number 1 choice, a Staghound as your number 2, you're suddenly running double tanks. And if you're running pintle mounters on those, each of those tanks can split fire 3 ways. It's insane. The amount of damage you can do to an enemy army is simply insane with this choice. So it's more expensive, of course, than my number 2 choice, the Airborne Jeep, but it is so good and very strong for army builds. Number 4 is the Universal Carrier, the Bren Carrier. It's a 7+ open-topped vehicle. It's in the transport section. I would not buy it as an armored car. I would buy it as a transport. It has a 5-man transport capacity, perfect for a unit of engineers. And at 70 points, that is very cheap. You're buying these for 70 points regular because you're, of course, you are adding a pintle-mounted LMG for 10 points. That is half the price of an LMG in an infantry unit. And that means that you have 8 MG shots that you can split fire with, as long as you have somebody in the transported capacity. I mean, you have to have somebody in the universal carrier to fire that pintle mounted. But if you do have that, perfect. That makes it a small tank. 7+, you can't get hurt by small arms fire. So yes, you can get pinned, but you can't get killed. So I see many builds where these are utilized as miniature tanks, so that you can have a Staghound, you can have a Stuart, and then you can have 3, 4 even universal carriers, which means that you have a tank platoon all of a sudden. The enemy will find that very, very hard to deal with. And if they approach your universal carrier, well, typically you would have something nasty waiting for them inside it. That could be SMG armed veterans, or it could be an engineer team, or it could be a flamethrower. All kinds of nasty stuff. Very, very good. And one thing I will note here is that for 10 points extra, you can have an AT rifle and the 4 MG shots. So you can get a forward-facing AT rifle, making it even more of a tank, miniature tank, right? Because you can actually hurt and pin armored vehicles then. So definitely worth a look. And then my number 5 is the early war motorcycle. Now this is not very good. It does have Reiki. It is very, very maneuverable, and it has a small profile like a Jeep, but it is soft-skinned and it is very, very open to any sort of damage that will kill it immediately. It also only has 4 LMG shots, but it's 35 points. So per shot versus the Airborne Jeep, it's not that good. But 35 points is very, very cheap. And if you're just buying it as an annoyance, as something that can wreck you, as something that can waste enemy time, it's extremely good. And it's even better because you can buy 3 for 1. Your armored car selection, this counts as 1/3 of that armored car selection. So you can buy 3 of these early war motorcycles. That's 75 points. No, sorry. That is 105 points. But that is amazing. That's really cool. That means you have 3 dice. You can give out 3 pins. You can move 3 places. You can contest objectives. These are so useful, and I would suggest always buying them in like squadrons of 3. Number 6, the SAS Jeep. Again, this is a version of the Airborne Jeep. This one has more machine gun shots. It's a little bit better in some respects, a little bit worse in others. It has the same bonuses. Has a very small profile. It's recce, but it is soft-skinned. It only costs 60 points, which is very cheap for the amount of DACA you get from this Jeep, because you have 3 HMG shots forward-facing, and you get 12 LMG shots, 8 of them to the rear, 4 of them to the front. So you have like 1 LMG to the front, 2 to the rear. Now, the main issue I have with this, and why it's only my number 6 pick, because it looks really good on paper, is the fact that you have them shooting to the rear. So most of the time you'll have 8 shots to your front. Yes, some of them will be HMG. That is a little bit better against veterans and maybe can even hurt soft-skinned vehicles and pin a tank. But it's only 8 shots, whereas the Airborne Jeep for 45 points is 10 shots. However, once you get that Jeep down into the enemy lines and you can turn it on its side, it's suddenly 15 shots. And that is very rare. Getting 15 MG shots for 60 points is really, really strong. And you can split fire with a lot of this. So you don't have to fire the HMG and the LMG at the same target. So you can split fire. You can deliver pins everywhere. You can offend multiple units. Really, really good. My number 7 is something I learned from Russell Wright, of the Welsh national team. Russell ran a M3 Lee, and that was actually not something I considered doing myself. But now I'm looking to maybe buying one. The Lee is again a Lend-Lease vehicle. So Hollywood Wargaming did cover this in their American vehicles. It's a 9+ vehicle. That is its main attraction. It's a medium tank. It costs 220 points, and this is where it gets, that sucks, right? Because that is expensive. But for those 220 points, you're not only getting a medium tank, you're getting 2 shots with anti-tank guns. Because you have a medium anti-tank gun and you have a light anti-tank gun. That is really good because that means you have double the chance of hitting. And that is one of the main drawbacks of most tanks with their one anti-tank cannon. At the same time, you have a coaxial MMG that's coaxial with the light anti-tank gun, and on top of that, you have a cupola, it's called, which is a miniature turret, so that you don't have to open the tank in order to shoot an extra MMG. This is really, really good. That means you can shoot at 3 targets again, and this time not be open topped. So this is an interesting choice. It's a really good anti-Stuart tank in my view, because it can shoot 2 Stuarts at once, and it can even shoot both of its weapons at 1 Stuart, making it really likely to kill it. And at the same time not be really in any danger because it's 9+. So the M3 Lee is my number 7th pick. Number 8 is the Sherman IB. That is the howitzer Sherman. Arguably, these 7 and 8 are very close to each other. They're both medium tanks, so it's a 9+. But this Sherman does have thin sides, and it easily catches fire, so it does have a lot of drawbacks. But it's also very much cheaper. 175 points makes it actually so that it's possibly worth it. It carries a medium howitzer, which is terrifying for infantry, and you can have a coaxial MMG and a hull-mounted MMG. So this is really good, but it's not something that you can push with. It's a tank that likes to sit in the back lines, where the sides doesn't matter that much, maybe in some cover, and then just wait in ambush for the enemy infantry or tanks to come out, and then shoot them with HE, giving them a lot of pins or killing them. So it's a really good tank, but it takes a little bit of practice to get it right, how to play it. My number 9. My number 9 is not a tank at all. It's the 15 CVT, the Chevrolet truck. And it's pretty crappy. It's soft-skinned. It has an 8-man transport capacity, and it costs 25 points for an inexperienced one of these. Here's where it gets good, though. 8-man transport capacity is perfect sizing for your assault units, for an assault unit full of Gurkhas or SMG toting veterans if you were some other nation, right? It's perfect size because you want 8-man in these units. So for me, this is like the perfect transportation for many types of units, and I use them quite a lot. They're also quite tall, which means that you can get quite a lot of cover behind it. If you wanted, I mean, if you're going to go suicide trucks, that is really good because it can really cover a lot of the terrain. Number 10 is my personal favorite. It's just because it's so fun. But it's actually, it's surprisingly good, maybe. It's the LVT Buffalo. Now, hear me out. I will hear a lot of people saying this is crap. This is not a vehicle that you want to go with. It's 7+, and you're paying 133 points for a 7+ vehicle. That is absolutely crap. Yes, it is. I agree. But try looking at it in another way. You're paying 133 points for something that can transport 30 men, or a universal carrier or Jeep, with stuff inside it, by the way. So you can have your LVT move it up, have a Jeep run out of that or drive out of that, and then have a flamethrower team go out of that and flame something in the enemy's deployment zone, because that is 9 plus 12 plus 6 plus 6. So it's a long threat range you suddenly get. And at the same time, you have 15 MMG shots, because you have a hull-mounted front-facing one, and you have 2 pintle-mounted MMGs 360. So you can offend quite a lot of units with this LVT. You can shoot 3 ways, and 15 MMG shots is getting into Stuart territory, right? If you focus all of them at one unit, that unit will definitely go down, or it will get shot to pieces. On top of this, if you really wanted to go berserk, and if you had the points, for 35 points extra, you can buy a light autocannon, which means that you're a threat now to light tanks, Stuarts. So for me, if I wanted to, in a single platoon, I could take a darker Stuart, a Staghound, and an LVT with a light autocannon. That is 3 tank-ish vehicles, all of them really good against enemy infantry. The only thing I need then is a couple of bazookas, and then I'm good, right? So yes, it is overcosted because it dies way too easily. But I know, you know what? I've been playing my LVT now for like 1.5 years now, and I find that it's quite easy to hide most of the time. Yes, it's really, really big. It's a bathtub. It's really big, but it's not that tall. So linear obstacles, walls and hedges, typically I can get cover for those because it's simply not that tall. It doesn't have the turret that many tanks do. So in that respect, I really like the LVT. It's my number 10. Thank you so much, and that was it from me. Cheers.